Dr. Ananya Barua. She is working as assistant professor in the Department of Philosophy, Hindu College, New Delhi. She has been born and brought up in Shillong, and her journey in academic field continued. Dr. Barua has many research publications and books to her credit. At the same time, she is a reputed and dedicated academician. She is working in Hindu College, and it ought to be mentioned here that Hindu College is ranked number one all over India in the recent India Today publication and number 3 in all over India NIRF. Madam, we are looking forward to you for your lecture session. And the topic that Madam has given us is Yoga of a Yogini in the context to feminine energy. Madam, please.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes.
Pranam to all the enlightened minds. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. With this prayer, I invoke upon Goddess Saraswati to bless us all, the learners of knowledge seekers, and especially the 2 days webinar, which is organized by Kachar College, Assam University, Department of Philosophy. My heartiest thanks to Marina Islam for taking me as a resource person, and after listening to all the profound thoughts, I hope I can do justice. The topic that I have selected, I entitled it as Yoga of a Yogini in context to feminine energy. The reasons behind being, I myself am someone who is very much into academic engagements related with Sri Shakti. Secondly, the context of yoga and yogini had always interested me, and this entire gamut of feminine energy was something which I had been studying of late. So bringing all these things together, I thought I might as well speak something on this. Now, without wasting much time, I think I would like to directly read from my paper. So here it is. Yoga for Yogini in context to feminine energy. Since antiquity, the contest of strength between Shaivism and Bhaktism has been in fashion. If the propounder of Shaivism owe their allegiance to Lord Shiva, the adherents of Bhaktism have a soft corner to Lord Vishnu. The former is hailed as the god of destroyer of Maya. The latter of universal householder or the preserver. The emblematic indications of these two sects are vividly pronounced and detailed. The former smears tilak on the forehead, which is called as Tripundra, which is of 3 liners representing the 3 guna, Sattvika, Tamasika, and Rajasika. On the other hand, the Vishnuvites or the Vaishnavites smears Vishnu tilak, called as Tirupundra, which is called as Urdhva Pundra, or upward U-shaped, which is in the feet of Lord Vishnu. And the emblematic indication is they look upwards for possible moksha from material bondage. Interestingly, if Hari is the name of Lord Vishnu, Hara Hara Mahadev, the Mahadev or the god of Devtas residing in everyone, Hara, is what the slogan of the devotees of the Shiva screams out. Shri and Yogini. The very name Yogini is derived from the Sanskrit term yoga, and we had a lot of enlightened deliberations on this theme. Yoga or Yuj, which is the union of the mental world with the spiritual realm, has been discussed and deliberated by Madam Lucy, by Chairman Sir, by Dubeji and others. In simple words, yogini is a lady who is associated with the practice of yoga. A Stree in Sanskrit is derived from the three terms Sattvika, Sa, Tamasika, Tra, and Rajasika, Ri. A Stree technically is one who is an amalgamation of the Sattvic guna, or one who is pious, happy, light, and her emblematic color is white. Tamasika, or when a Stree is provoked to, can be in the form of Kali or in the form of Durga. The emblematic color of Tamasika is dark. Rajasika, or an activator of the free agent who decides on the given options of the path of Sattvika or Tamasika and trods on wherever, whatever, however her soul decides, and her color of emblematic is red. Now, mythology and yogini, a little bit of the background of yogini. The concept of yogini has diverse narratives. The most credible narrative is the emergence of the yoginis in their ferocious designs, numbering to 64 from Shiva Shakti's encounter. This encounter traces back to their diamond Sati, or also called as Dakshayayani, the youngest daughter of King Daksha, insisting on her husband, Shiva, to visit the yagya, or the ceremonial fire, at her father's palace uninvited. On being denied initial permission, it is said that Sati did put her foot down and took the ferocious rupas of yoginis. Lord Shiva awkwardly exited from the premises and falteringly allowed Sita to go. Quotation from Dahija, 1986 publication. In the Mahabhagavata Purana, Shiva forbids Sita to disrupt her father's yagya, and in doing so, he makes her very angry. In her wrath, she transforms into a fearful woman who is plainly unlike the graceful Sati. She loses her composure, her hair messy, and her temperament fiery. She develops 4 arms and her wagging tongue lolls out of her mouth. She is also garbed in a garland of human heads and a half-moon crown. This terrifying form of Sati is known as Kali. Shiva is so afraid by this, he tries to flee, but to prevent his escape, Sati blocks his way with her 10 different forms, the Mahavidyas, or wisdom goddesses. Shiva is so shocked and terrified by this that he finally allows Sati to go to the sacrifice. This is from Dahija, 1986 publication. Traditionally, yoginis or Mahavidyas are so called because they are the deity who emanates from the second part of Stree, Tamasika. It is the strong Shakti found in Tamasika Guna that converts a Stree to a yogini. Sattvika is the polar opposite of Tamasika, as it is submissive, giving, nurturing. Though few yoginis are taken also as an extension of Sattvika too. Popularly, there are taken to be 64 yoginis, though this number is contestable. This 64 yoginis, I'm going to mention some of them, definitely not the 64. The 64 tantric yoginis are: 1. Kali Nitya Siddhanta, eternal dark goddess, mother of perfected yogis. 2. Kapilini Nagalakshmi, snake goddess of prosperity who wears a garland of cows. Kuladevi Swarnadeha, illuminated tribal goddess of golden body. Kurukulla Rasanatha, cause of knowledge, ruler of nectar. Viprodinihi Vilasinihi, one who enjoys paradox. Viprichita Ratrapriya, Raktapriya, inspires the heart for the passionate beloved. Ugra Rakta Bhoga Rupa, form of enjoyment in untamable passion. Ugraprabha, Sukrantaha, ruler of clarity, wonder, and commander of the untamable. Deepa Muktihi Rakta Deha, lights the lamp of freedom through the body of passion. Nila Bhukti Rakta Sparsha, enjoys the beautiful illusion of space through the touch of passion. Ghanamaha Jagadamba, fullness of the great mother of the world. And so on. There is a huge list. I'm just about mentioning the most prominent ones. We also have Bhuvaneshwari Mantrini, Chinamatsya, Bhairavi, Dhumavati, Kundalini, Bagalamukhi, Matanga Kanti, and so forth. Also, there is mention of Varahi, Kakurami, Kriya, Saktini, Indrani, Mukti, Vaishnavi, Satyarupini, Maheshwari, Lakshmi, Manormayani, and Durga, of course. Yogini is an embellishment of Shaktism followed in our Indian culture. However, the offerings offered to appease the yoginis are often crude and gross in their tamasic form, such as blood, meat, alcohol, and more. This much is clear that Shaktism is the antithesis of Vaishnavism. Before I further proceed, I would like to bring to your notice the very emergence of, or the connect between yoga and yogini. Yoga as a philosophical school was introduced by the Saint Patanjali. Let me begin with the following quote. I respectfully bow down with folded hands and offer my salutations to sage Patanjali, the highest among the munis, who has presented the remedies of removing the impurities of the body through his treatise on Ayurveda, of language through his treatise on grammar, Patanjali Mahabhashya, and the impurities of the chitta, mind field, through his treatise on yoga, Yoga Sutras, Patanjali. This is Yoga 1978 publication. The Yoga Sutra 2.29 citation mentions about the Ashtanga, or the 8 Ashtanga Yoga, 8 lanes of Yoga Darshan, as we all know, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are, without an iota of doubt, the most authentic and authorized elementary texts on Yoga Darshan of self-examination. The Yoga Sutras are more than 5,000 years old, and their thematic relevance is more new than ever before. Yoga Darshan is the only philosophy that not only nurtures the physical modality of a person, but also trains the mental and enhances the spiritual side of an individual. Yoga Darshan, by all means, is all-inclusive, as it is a testimony from across all genders and ages. However, the exploration in this paper has been specifically on the relationship of yoga and yogini. In the next section, I shall be mentioning certain poses of yoga that helps to unleash the feminine energy in a yogini, unleashing the feminine energy. In this section, I shall be picking up a few yogic postures that demonstrates the awakening of their inner goddess. For this, a visual graph will be provided where the vortex of feminine energy is unleashed. Now, before I actually proceed to this, can I kindly take you all to this very brief introduction, which we are all acquainted with, on yin and yang. Quotation. The yin and yang symbol, also known as the Tai Chi symbol, consists for the yang side. Tai Chi symbol consists of a circle divided into two halves by a curved line. One half of the circle is black, typically representing the yin side. The other is white for the yang side. A dot of each color is situated near the center of the other's half. The two halves are thus intertwining across a spiral-like curve that splits the whole into semicircles, and the small dots represent the idea that both sides carry the seed of the other. The white dot in the black area and the black dot in the white area connote coexistence and unity of opposites to form a whole. The curvy line signifies that there are no absolute separations between the two opposites. The yin-yang symbol then embodies both sides, duality, paradox, unity and diversity, change and harmony. The above said quotation depicts the complex attribute of the Chinese concept of the Shi symbol called as yin and yang, as much as they radiate apparent contradictions, with one being solid, the other broken, or one being masculine, the other feminine. The underlying point of narration is they are not mutually exclusive of each other and in fact complements the other in the holistic theoretical and practical framework. Many who sided only with a part of it portrayed an incomplete side of yin being dominant or yang, undermining the balanced connotation of reciprocity that both share. Going ahead with this bifurcation, the ideologies of feminism or women-centricness alone evolved. What is being missed out is all the display of 64 yoginis is a fine elucidation of yin and yang, for nowhere do the yoginis come close to be broken or disheveled. Instead, they exude a formidable presence of piercing discomposure, abhorrence many a times, and agitation. This is made crystal clear from the following passage again, quote, according to the scholar Vidya Dehija, the roots of yogini worship are outside the normal orthodox Brahmanical traditions. The yogini traditions are tantric in nature and therefore have strong connections to rural and tribal traditions. The origin of the yoginis appear to be in small rural villages. They are local village goddess, grama devatas, who look over the wellness of an individual village. Through Tantricism, these local deities were able to gain new forms and vitality as a group of goddesses who could impart magical powers to their worshippers. The cult of the yoginis is often associated with a sense of fear and awe because the yoginis are sculpted with demonic expressions or other dark attributes. When the yoginis are depicted in sculpture or described in text, they often have the heads of various birds such as parrots, hawks, peacocks, eagles, pigeons, and owls. They were also carved with characteristics from other animals like frog, elephant, jackal, goat, ox, tiger, horse, snake, and so on. Along with having the qualities of birds and other elements, the yoginis are repeatedly talked about as having severed heads in their hands or scattered among their feet. In one story from the Padma Purana, the yoginis is called by Shiva to consume heaps of flesh from a demon head that Shiva had severed. This story talks of how they rejoiced after eating the flesh and drinking the blood of the demon, and describes them as having enormous bodies and sharp fangs. Yoginis are occasionally depicted with numerous arms, anywhere from 4 to 8. It is pivotal to point out at this stage that yin and yang are not the binary antithesis as they are made out of. As distinct and unique they both are, there is an underlying thread that connects the two extremes. This thread is the thread of shared belongingness that echoes with harmony, balance, and parity. The ardor of yin is marked by sun, masculinity, and stout-heartedness, whereas yang is characterized by moon, softness, and nurturing. However, most of the yogic postures of yogini ascribed below states how yin and yang are subliminally merged, so they emerge in bold confidence, sitting, standing, or more such postures which exude an undaunted, valiant, and self-assured upbeat. The poised positions and postures of yoga oozes with strength, bold, and fearless moves. Yoga is surely not for the faint-heartedness. This I say so because yoga demands rigorous discipline, solid practice, and long and strenuous hours of commitment. The veterans of yoga speak about unvarying and unexceptional and sanctioned customary part and parcel of everyday life. I have just heard Dubeji saying that a minimum of 40 minutes is necessary. And we have also heard Lucy Madam say that it doesn't matter whether we are ill or swastha, we need to have an assigned place where we can meditate and get involved in our yoga darshan. The physical and corporeal moves gives way to the smooth blending of emotional, mental, and spiritual roundabouts. Yoga completes both the outer and inner hygienic, healthy, and sanitized way of life. I come to the most important part of my paper now, feminine energy. I would be showing few graphics now, so I would like to share my PPT. And here, the lady who is doing the yogic posture is Ms. Gitanjali Bhuya Rajkwa, based in Ireland. And she has been kind enough to give me her practice visuals. And if I know, it is just a happy moment for me to introduce her. So I will be showing her yogic postures now. Marina, I just hope I can share my PPT now. Yes. Can I share my PPT, please? Is this, can you all see this? Can you all see this?
Yes, madam, we can see.
Yes? Okay, fine. Feminine energy. So I'm coming to the meaty part of my paper. The diversified postures of yoga not only illustrates the detoxifying segment of the inner world, but also augments the stillness of spiritual journey that harmonizes the physical body with mind and spirit. Invocation of feminine energy can be transcended when one closely examines the yogic postures of a yogini. Some of these are, so this is the first yogic posture, which is called as Apansana, a blissful posture of a yogini that radiates a cocoon side to her. To embrace herself, pamper herself, indulge herself only validates that charity begins at home. And she is in total love with her Sri Shakti. This Shakti could be anything, Sattvika, Tamasika, or Rajasika. This posture of yogini oozes with the theme of acceptance, accepting oneself the way one is, without change, without edits, without force, without anything extraneous or false. The second one is the mudra, where it awakens the inner power of an yogini. The easiness to digestion intake in the larger intestines, followed by the output of sweat being exuded, only speaks volume of the balanced, sped up inner health of an individual who practices such mudras. When the inner health is sound, the outer health is bound to be sound. The third one is the yogini of an archer's pose. If you can see it, it's the pose of an archer. The archer pose, the accomplished posture of an archer of a yogini, oozes with durability, substance, and vitality. The regular wear and tear that the tissues, nerves, and all our physical body is prone to gets greatly minimized with this yogic posture. This posture also speaks the inner warriorness of Sri Shakti that lies dormant in every female. This energy, when provoked to, unleashes out in the most magnifying and glorious form. Yogini's posture of Matsyayana, or the fish posture. The Matsyayana posture of a yogini transcends to an entire narrative of Sri Shakti, considering that the 10 avatars, or the Dasa avatar of Lord Vishnu, starting from Matsya or fish, this asana is energized by it. The yogini here is in perfect stillness and in sync with her inner and outer world. She can delve deep down into the troubled waters as much as she can float from all the worldly material temptations. This asana helps in activating an imbalanced thyroid hormone and radiates the yogini with sheer joy and delight. The next posture is the yogini's half pigeon pose. The pose of a yogini depicts the stretching on her hip areas that enables her to discharge the tension loaded. Stree Shakti, or creation that the yogini is elementally, rewards a woman with advanced and regular blood circulation. And openness of chest, or the chest protruding out, depicts the nurturing and nourishing overflowing of her heart energy to the world's energy outside. Namaskaram. Well, this Namaskaram yogic posture is the starting of any greeting or salutation in all of our culture. This yogic posture enables the restless mind to become silent and aware. Self-awareness is the highest form of liberation for spiritual enhancement. The next posture is the yogini of drinking bird posture. Here, in this particular posture, if you notice, it shows its speaks of birth and grace. The aligning head speaks of low or heavy thoughts being thrown away at bay. The forced hands thrown backwards indicate the fullness through which Stree Shakti of a yogini unleashes out her inner power. This visual is a telltale harmony, empowerment, and recognition of one's own inner Shakti. This posture also triggers the Muladhara chakra of a yogini, which Lucy Ma'am had spoken enough about the Muladhara chakra. The final one that I have taken is Nava Yogini, the ultimate unleashing, is the symbol of ultimate unleashing, or the yogini of being unleashed can be clearly and vividly seen in this yogic posture. The overall stretches of the body, path screams of penance, hard work, and exhilarating joy accompanied with this yogic posture. It is the finest of all, for it is the symbol of woman emancipation, empowerment, and sublimeness. Now, the goddess in various forms of yoginis, fierce ones such as Kali Chidmastika, to Chandala, to Dhumavati, to the more pleasing ones and appealing yoginis like Lakshmi, Parvati, Saraswati, embodies the Stree Shakti in the truest sense. It is the procedure of yoga is the only platform that can transcend a Stree to a yogini. As much as the entire narrative of yogini can be pushed under the umbrella term of Shaktakal or Tantra, let us not forget that Vaishnavism and Shaivism are the two sides of the same God. Yin and Yang, as I had said, are not mutually exclusive. If Lord Vishnu is addressed so because a portion of his name evokes vish, poison, Lord Shiva is called the Nilsani, or he drinks vish or halahal to save mankind. Lord Shiva, if he wears the creepy serpent around his neck, Lord Vishnu rests on the pavilion of Sheshnag, or the Lord of Serpents. The treatment, diagnosis, and the care of each of the cult's worshippers might differ in terms and conditions, but let us not forget that the presence of one is pivotal, for then only the significance of the other can be illustrated. Assam. Now, I think no presentation of mine will be complete if I fail to mention the place which is my Janma Bhumi, my Matribhumi, Assam. Assam, for instance, has a rich tradition of the two cults running parallelly. As much as there is the opulent presence of Shakti peaks like Kamakhya Devi, or ferocious yoginis like Ugratara Devi Mandir, there has also been the tradition of Bhakti movement or the sing-song praises to Lord Vishnu. This wave of change was largely seen post the 15th century Vaishnavite saint of Assam, Srimanta Shankardev, whose philosophy of Ekacharna Nama Dharma, seeking refuge in the feet of Lord Vishnu alone is enough to liberate a tired soul, and he will immediately come under the protection of Lord Vishnu is a slogan which is there in, I think, in every Assamese household. The rhythm of Sri Shakti, I'm coming to the conclusion of my paper now. The rhythm of Sri Shakti emerges when both the powers of yin and yang comes together and is fused to emerge into a successful narrative of the legend of Sri Shakti. The Odyssey of a Yogini is thus not only empowering, but also resourceful, inspirational, and living. Thank you so much to everyone for listening to my presentation. My heartiest salutation to all the enlightened minds who have spoken before me. My salutation goes to my family, my relatives, my cousins, my friends, my colleagues, my research scholars, students, well-wishers, and friends who did view this virtual presentation today. My deepest gratitude to each one of you, and to Marinava especially. Thank you so much. Thank you. Namaste. Pranam.
Thank you so much, madam, for your enlightening lecture. Your topic, yoga of a yogini in context to feminine energy. Ma'am, it is a very vast topic. You have enlightened it in very detailed. Looking forward to hear much more on this topic in the near future, in the coming days. If any webinar is there, or in the coming days, if any seminar is there, we'd like to hear more from you on this topic. Thank you so much, madam. And namaskar. Dear participants, the webinar is open for questions and queries. If you have any, please ask, madam.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Hello.
It's a very. Yeah. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Anyways, it's a very wonderful.
We have our own record, but we have to put the marks in the
Hello?
file.
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please tell me.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask one question.
Yes.
Like you said, the word yogini, right? Yeah, yogini. You said yogini is a Sanskrit word for a female teacher of yoga, and yoga refer to masculine, right, ma'am?
No. I think you must have misheard me. I never said, yoga is masculine. Yoga, the word is connoted, is derived from the word yuj, which itself means union, right, of the physical world. Yeah. So I think maybe you must have misheard me, or maybe I must have miscommunicated. I never said yoga, is masculine.
All right. So which means like yogini is it's referred to female, right, ma'am?
Yes, because to be a yogini, there has to. Yes, hello.
Yeah.
There has to be a transcendence from Sri. Sri is, the regular one. Me, my cousins, my mother, everyone is a Sri. But to transcend from Sri to yogini, we need a lot of penance. We need a lot of hard work. So that's
all right.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is that, like, is there any term? Is there any word for to call a transgender?
To call sorry, what?
Transgender. Is there any like yogic or Sanskrit term to call transgender?
transgender, I am not really aware, but I think the enlightened mind sitting here will be in a position to enlighten me further on this. I'm sorry, I do not really,
No, no problem, no problem. All right. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Specific instruction for naming.
Hello?
How to name.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
We have to name the files in a specific way.
Hi, Ananadi. This is Pragya.
Hi, Pragya.
Yeah, this is a very nice presentation. And the one query that I am having is the point that you have made regarding this Shakticism is the antithesis of Vaishnavism. So can you explain a little bit more about this, how Shaktism is an antithesis to Vaishnavism?
Yes. Pragya, when I started my paper, I had elaborated few characteristic emblematic symbols that distinguishes a hardcore Vaishnavite from a Shaivite. Yeah. For instance, the tilak, for instance, the tilak of Vaishnavite is the U shape, as we know, and a Shaivite is ash smeared, the triple marks, right? Now, the point here is there are telltale differences of Vaishnavism and Shaivism. I'm not denying that. Like in Assam, for instance, we have the strong Kamakhya, the Shaktipet, which again is an extension of Shaivism only. But parallelly, we also have, thanks to Srimant Sahankardev, we have Bhaktism too. Now, though Bhaktism or Vaishnavism is an antithesis to Shaivism, I did bring in the point of yin and yang, where I tried to showcase that yin and yang are not contradictory. The existence of yin is necessary for the existence of yang. So I can only say, if, for instance, if I'm a Vaishnavite, to be even critical of Shaivite, I need to have the other. Until unless there is an other, how can I even progress? How can I even evolve? But having said that, we have to understand that Vaishnavism or Shaivism, ultimately, it is about one God. So if there is the presence of a serpent, snake being folded around the neck of Lord Shiva, we have Lord Vishnu too resting on Krishna, or the Lord of Serpents. So it is not that things are only emblematic only to Shaivism or to Vaishnavism. There are parallel. The narratives are parallel. So there is an antithesis to start on with. But I would think it will be a misnomer if we conclude it as they are completely distinct. I think they are complementary more than being contradictory.
Achha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Pragya.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Madam, actually, I am Dr. Shujit Devnath from Tripura. Madam, your presentation was very nice, madam, and it is very informative also. So,
thank you.
And I shall not ask any question, madam, to you, but actually, I'd like to see your paper, actually. Yes, it is very nice.
Sure.
That one. That will be helpful.
Sure, you can take my email ID from Arina Ba, I think, and we can be in touch. And maybe I can, then we can discuss and share my, writings or whatever I keep on doing.
Okay,
yes?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your appreciation. Means a lot.
Hello, madam.
Yes.
Madam,
yes.
Your presentation is very nice, so very authentic, and but something is asking. So, any woman who dedicates her life to mysticism and enlightenment can rightfully call her a yogini?
Dedicates. Now,
yes,
this word dedicate again can have various meanings. For instance, a mother, let me take the example of a mother, for she is the best example, I guess. A mother, as much as she can be academically engaged, but she also dedicates, she sees to it that her children, her extensions are well taken care of. Now, for many who have not seen God, would like to say that my mother is God for me. So this entire concept of mysticism, or this entire concept of, because I personally do not feel that samsara and nirvana are opposites, because someone can attain enlightenment even when he or she is very much into the part and parcel of samsara. So for me, a mistake, just like Rumi, we have this very famous Parsi poet Rumi, who is known as a mystic. He attained liberation while he was a part and parcel of writing his, fantastic quotations, his fantastic stream of poetry. So I feel that someone who dedicates, it can be as simple as someone taking care of her children. It could be someone who is engaged academically. Wherever there is, I think, dedication, wherever there is passion, wherever there is sincerity, I think, because please understand, the term mysticism is very personal. What is mysticism for me need not be mysticism for you, because, for instance, I might have a soul-to-soul conversation with God. You might have with nature. Someone might have with a concept called nothingness, in philosophy, or Shunyavada. Or someone, again, might have a soul-to-soul connection with something tangible. Someone might have with something abstract. So what I have a connection is very personal, is very private, is very subjective. So to generalize that someone who has dedicated to this, can be called mysticism, I think there will be broader interpretations to this, or this is an open-ended question.
Okay, madam. Okay, thank you, madam.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Okay. Just one, madam, I thought actually, madam, I one question, sir. Actually. Hello.
Yes, tell me. Yes.
Madam, what is the difference jnana and karma yoga?
I think with all my, due respect and reverence to our Bhagavad Gita, we know that there has been 3 streams that has been streamlined: bhakti, jnana, and karma. So it is not really needed that, you can attain enlightenment only after you become a jnani. Even through bhakti, you can attain enlightenment, or through karma, you can attain enlightenment. And jnana and karma, I think, goes hand in hand, because personally I feel my karma is my dharma. So I think it's a very neat bifurcated path laid down in a Bhagavad Gita, where it is either the bhakti path or the jnana path or the karma path, whichever you feel like. I think that's the beauty of our philosophy. It's beautiful. It's not like this or this. There are multiple choices given to us. So either the bhakti path or the karma path or the jnana path, whichever path your soul becomes, I think you should draw them that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Hello.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
I think this is Sumit.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So congratulations, Ananya. It is a matter of pride for me to listen to such, enlightening deliverance from you. Very informative and thought-provoking. And your presentation has also given me some food for thought, and certain things came to me just like that. So I wanted to share with you, and if in case you want to respond. The basic understanding that we have of Sankhya and yoga is that yoga is like Seshwar Sankhya, and the entire metaphysics of Sankhya is acceptable to yoga. Now, if we go by the basic understanding or talk about the analogies of Sankhya, they are very chauvinistic. The way they talk about Prakriti is also very, patriarchal, where a woman is seen as an object of desire. And I'm not sure if actually they want to put women in the category of a Purush. Now, by introducing this aspect of yogini, I think you have somehow tried to give a counter, and thereby a complete picture can emerge. And now, as you were talking about sansaric level, as long as we are, of course, in this empirical world, and Purush and Prakriti are united, we can talk about the distinction in terms of men, women, and a very interesting question had come in terms of third sex. So while we are in this empirical united form, such a distinction can be made. But would you agree that once, say, a Purush, and the word again, you see Purush is in dominant sense only male, would you agree that, say, an aspirant, once one has reached the Keval position, where one has completely separated oneself from Prakriti, can at that stage you would agree to make the distinction of yoga, yogini, or like that third distinction, or you would believe that that will be a sexless identity?
Yeah, precisely. I think, thank you so much, Sumit. I think you have, in a way, answered your question. For me, all these bifurcations or all these classifications of yogini or purusha or prakriti are for laymen like, me to understand, because I'm very comfortable with the two concepts of Brahman, as we know, the Nirguna Brahman and the Brahman which is without feature, and the Shaguna Brahman. So when
Nirgun.
for example, Nirgun Brahman and Shaguna Brahman. So if I tell someone that Brahman is, without this, without that, on 1880, a young mind, like in a college, a young mind will really get confused. So I have to introduce with the Shaguna concept of Brahman, that Brahman has these features, Brahman has this, and then finally, slowly and gradually, we unlearn. We teach him, or we learn along with him to unlearn what we have learned about Shaguna Brahman, and then we go to the concept of Nirguna Brahman. Similarly, I feel whatever I have presented today, yes, I did try to show that, the moment the Sri becomes a yogini, she is in her ferocious best. She is not a broken or disheveled woman, She is someone who is a power to reckon with. And having said that, there are strong masculine energy present in her. So I think if there are strong masculine energy, then the yin and yang parallel comes very handy here. For we have to understand that ultimately, when we try to soar higher, the concept of moksha, or the concept of liberation or salvation, is basically one. It is without any form, it is without any feature, it is basically nirguna. So even the classification of yogini will just stop there. It will not go up to that level, because there it is one, it gets blended with everything. The classifications no longer hold a position. Is that fine, Sumit?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I had a question.
Hi, Atman. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, my question was that when yoga focuses on, the Ashtanga yoga focuses on yam and niyam, and ahimsa becomes an integral aspect of achieving your yogic enlightenment, then how do we reconcile what I understand as the contradictory aspect of the ferociousness of the yogini? Because from the way I understand it, if ferociousness is to be understood, then it goes in contradiction with ahimsa.
Yes. Well, I think your question has two parts, Atman. The first part is about ahimsa, whether our objective is how to reach to ahimsa. And secondly, a yogini is dealing with himsa. So how can she attain ahimsa herself, if I'm right? Now, as we have discussed, Ashtanga yoga, definitely ahimsa is an integral part. But please understand, we can understand ahimsa only when we understand what is himsa. Only when I understand what is violence can I understand what is non-violence. If someone tells me, for example, if I tell my 6-year-old son that, please do not hit your sister. Now, what is hitting? He has to know, what is hitting first. Then only he'll understand the negation, the himsa means negation of himsa. So the concept is the yoginis. Please understand, Stri, the word Stri is a Sanskrit derivation of Sattvika, Tamasika, and Rajasika. So it is not that Stri is always nice and pious and Sati Savitri. She can be tamasic too when provoked too. She can be Kali. She can be Durga. So ahimsa, though yes, yoga does say ahimsa is an integral part, but please understand himsa, or and the himsa with whom? Himsa, the fight with yourself, the fight with oneself, the strife with oneself to be a better version, to be a evolver version. that is only possible when there's a rift, when there is a strife with you yourself. You're not really bothered much with the outside world, with you yourself. And I think that's where even the yogini, what are they doing? They're unleashing out their energy. Why are they unleashing out their energy? Because women, or Sri, as we all know, had been so-called, docile and so-called those very silent spectators. So the need to assert yourself. Sakti, for instance, when she puts her foot down to visit her father's palace and gate crashes the entire function, speaks volume of a woman who can also be tamasic, where we do put our foot down. So it is not that Himsa and Ahimsa are, though they are contradictory, but please understand, to understand Ahimsa, I have to be very sure about the concept of Himsa first.
Thank you so much, madam, for taking out your time and enlightening us. Thank you so much, madam.